Beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, the ancient hidden submerged secrets revealed. It's no secret that beneath the Great Pyramid are vertical shafts and tunnels, hidden chambers, and even a subterranean lake. Yes, there's a lake underneath the Great Pyramid. To find underground water in a dry desert area where there shouldn't be any is really intriguing. Tourists don't get to see the more interesting lower depths of the Great Pyramid, which, due to accessibility problems, has kept important secrets safe for thousands of years. There are layers of shafts that lead straight down through solid limestone, much like the tunnels seen in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings, where the ancient Egyptians buried their dead and hid from ordinary man vast treasures. Once you get past ground level in the pyramid, there is a second layer shaft which descends to a court flanked on both sides by 7 chambers. Some of these chambers contain huge sarcophagi of basalt and granite, 18 feet high. There are no carvings on the stone to tell us who is owner or may have been its purpose for being there. These sarcophagi were allegedly open and empty when found. Down an even narrower shaft, to a third and even deeper level, 95 feet down, lies a clear subterranean lake containing a submerged blue stone sarcophagus about 9 feet in length and weighing between 11 to 12 tons. 95 feet down, submerged in is a blue stone sarcophagus, 12 tons, surrounded by 4 pillars which have since been removed. The chamber was said to be the tomb of Osiris, quote unquote. This is what Dr. Zahi Hawass claims. He's the director of the Giza Plateau back in 1997 to 99 when they first discovered this. How it got such narrow shafts is an even greater mystery, as no other entrances have been found. The Egyptian government claims they extracted the sarcophagus and found it empty, but there are no videos or pictures anywhere to be found of them actually unsealing it, and in this day of mass media promotion and documentaries on almost everything, it's pretty hard to believe they would pass up such an extraordinary opportunity. Especially Dr. Zahi Hawass, he likes having documentaries, videos, images, talking as he goes along, discovering, opening everything. So we have no pictures anywhere to be found of them unsealing this. We do know that they supposedly carbon dated the sarcophagus and found the results completely challenged, accepted Egypt chronology about the pyramid's age. Even that news went completely silent. This major discovery happened in the late 90s, as we said, yet no news update has ever been made public on the alleged quote-unquote tomb of Osiris. And there are good reasons for this. We're quite certain the Egyptian Department of Antiquities will not find the god Osiris nor any other being inside. Why is that? Because this particular sarcophagus is virtually impossible to open. Remote viewed the submerged area by one person found the sarcophagus to be impenetrable. And so she contacted experts to remote view, clairvoyance about author E.M. Nicolai, who is extremely proficient at these sort of things. Not knowing lack of findings, he confirmed that it had never been opened, but provided further information. It appears that the sarcophagus was quote-unquote genetically sealed. Sarcophagus was genetically sealed, meaning that no man can open it unless his or her DNA matches the genetic coding intentionally locked in place. The ancient Atlanteans who brought their advanced knowledge to Egypt, read Who Really Built the Great Pyramids, Part 1, apparently devised a fail-safe method much like our iris scans or fingerprint security locks do today, but much more sophisticated. Pretty clever, it was using DNA. Archaeologists report that the sarcophagus sits in cold, clear water that sizzles when objects fall into it. The water sizzles when objects fall into it. Is it acidic? Is burning objects that come into contact with the water, quote unquote? Understanding they avoided physical contact, assuming it contained some caustic ancient substance. Yet the water wasn't always there. The water was not always there. Due to the strange properties of this particular sarcophagus, a flooding of magnetic energy occurred when it came in contact with water and somehow charged it, creating an additional level of protection. Whether accidental or intentional, in design, it only adds further to the mystery. In other words, the water that was in there was electrified. Anything falling into it would be electrocuted. It's obvious there is something very important inside the sarcophagus to warrant such safeguards. Nikolai reported that it contained a major planetary entrance to a dimensional portal. This particular portal is a key stargate that anchors our entire planet, much like a divine engine. Could this be the true entrance to the Hall of Records, which the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce predicted would be found, but could only be unlocked by a select few? If so, no archaeologist has, thus far, displayed the right genetic code to crack this. While present-day archaeologists are still trying to figure this out, how to open this sealed container, it may be a futile task. Unfortunately, the beings with the correct genetic codes to open it are no longer present in this world, as far as we know, that is. One of these beings would, in fact, have to incarnate to accomplish this. To understand how this genetic coding all came to be, one has to first go back to the time of Atlantis, as referred by the writer here in the previous blog. She says she will attempt to give a brief overview in order to shed light on man's rather complex history. Before the third and final upheaval of Atlantis, there existed two major ruling parties. On Atlantis, that is. The Order of Melchizedek, also known as the Sons of the Law of One, which had 12 members like senators, and the Sons of Belial, sometimes referred to as Baal, which also had 12 members. Each group knew how to use the spiritual truths of God and the forces of nature, but the Sons of Belial used this knowledge for the material gain of physical power and service to self, whereas the Melchizedek followers believed that it should only be used for the service of others. A continual struggle regarding man's proper use of advanced technology and universal knowledge existed between these two opposing parties. It's the age-old battle between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. These differences led to the misuse of advanced weaponry by the Sons of Belial for the purpose of ridding areas of the earth from an overpopulation of large animals, the dinosaurs. The Belial followers ignored all safety warnings, which consequently caused a planetary shift, massive flood inundation, and thousands of lives being lost. Before the final upheaval, Atlantis had many colonies or outposts, quote-unquote, spread throughout the world, as in China, Latin America, India, Mongolia, Egypt, and we even find signs of pyramids, giants, and ancient Hebrew writing in, of course, North America. Egypt was their principal outpost, and it was here that the Atlantean entity known as Thoth, the Lord of Magic and Time, aka Enoch, traveled before the Great Flood, now known as the biblical flood of Noah, the deluge, to preserve the knowledge of Atlantis before it was destroyed. All 12 members from the Order of Melchizedek were dispersed to outposts in other parts of the world to also secure the sacred knowledge. The Mayan civilization was one of these outposts, and from the Atlanteans, They would inherit celestial and timekeeping, quote-unquote, knowledge. There were seniors and survivors of the sons of Belial who set up their own habitation areas on earth after the Great Flood, but the sons of Belial and the Order of Melchizedek weren't the only two groups to have staked out new territories. There were also the Anunnaki. The ancient Sumerian texts refer to them as the, quote, gods from the sky, unquote. The Bible refers to them as the Nephilim, or the fallen angels who came to earth and mated with humans. Most of these quote-unquote god myths are not myths at all. The Anunnaki were an extraterrestrial race that came to earth and put down roots in Mesopotamia. They were responsible for the advanced Sumerian civilization that suddenly sprang out of nowhere. This ancient Assyrian land, today's Iraq, has always been seen as the cradle of civilization because of the Anunnaki influence. The Anunnaki were technologically advanced, yet their primary interest was mining Earth's gold resources in the African mines. To do so, they needed lots of workers, which their own people would not provide. To fulfill their labor need, they employed genetic manipulation and in vitro fertilization techniques to create a new breed of hybrid workers that came from their bloodline but were essentially slaves. The idea of ET genetic manipulation may sound preposterous to some, but just recently, longtime researchers in the Human Genome Project, stated that they now believe, quote, the so-called 97% of non-coding sequences in the human DNA is nothing less than genetic code of extraterrestrial life forms, end quote. While science no longer finds this theory far-fetched, Nobel Prize winner of DNA fame, Sir Francis Crick, has always espoused the belief of our extraterrestrial origins. Several races sprang from the Anunnaki genetic experiments, such as the Arabs, the Hebrews, and the 12 tribes of Israel. This would forever set the stage for undercurrent of resentment and persecution for centuries to come, especially when the Anunnaki left and the Hebrews were then taken into slavery by the Egyptians and Babylonians. One can begin to understand the conflict over the centuries between the races in the Middle East and the rest of the world. The roots to the Anunnaki and the disruptive energy of these areas runs deep, as we can still see today. There are those that have clearly taken advantage of this for the control of people and lands. While certain civilizations tend to whitewash their history, as man oftentimes does to make himself appear good and righteous, the Anunnaki saw themselves as all-powerful and had no qualms about destroying those who might interfere with their legacy. When an influx of Atlanteans came into their lands after the Great Flood, that's about 15,000 to 13,000 BC, the Anunnaki waged a war for territorial dominance. The sons of Belial quickly sided against the Melchizedeks and joined ranks with the Anunnaki, who, like themselves, were more interested in material power and gain. A sky war was waged with fireball weapons, quote-unquote, fireball weapons that disseminated thousands of people. This is the war the ancient Vedic texts describe in terms which we now understand to be the use of nuclear weapons. Researchers have verified evidence of such ancient nuclear battle sites in the Middle East. Again, it appears that history may be repeating itself. After the Great Sky War, the Anunnaki eventually left Earth. The Melchizedek Atlanteans made sure the key Earth portal entry under the Great Pyramid was sealed and not accessible to those of the Anunnaki DNA bloodline or their descendants. Thoth made sure of it. It is undeniable that Thoth was a very interesting link in man's history. He was a spiritual being with great knowledge and stature. In fact, many Atlanteans would be considered giants by today's standards, with heights between 7 to 8 feet tall. They towered over man both intellectually and physically. They were called, quote-unquote, immortal gods, not because they couldn't die, but because they could live for several hundred years, having clearly discovered the secret to longevity, which is a characteristic of higher dimensional lineage. This slow aging process has been known to confuse a historical timeline if one is thinking in limited human lifespan years. This is one reason why many of these ancient stories have been explained away as myth. Much of what Thoth put in place deteriorated after his death and transmutation, but beneath the pyramids his legacy still lives on. More unusual articles on Egypt are on Trifinity and Beyond blog. This is written by Dr. Kathy Forty. She's a clinical psychologist and inventor of Trini 48 technology and the author of the book Fractals of God. This is on Trinity 8. I'll leave links below for you for this.